Good morning, 220 students. I thought we might do some traditional classroom board work because I do want to show you a couple of things that I think was way easier to explain in terms of formatting right here on this board. So I tried to give you some comments in your Essay 1 revisions, and it's going to be important to look at this for Essay 2 as well. So we'll get to the board in a second. But for right now, I just wanted to kind of talk about the week again. We are in a holiday week, and I like to kind of give you some time to, I think it's really important summer to be able to recharge with friends and family and to not be super stressed about your classes at this time. Although I know that's hard to say because right now we're kind of working on two papers at the same time. So I know that can be a little bit overwhelming. So let's start with Essay 1. Most of you, I think, were able to either see or listen to my comments. They are all in grades under Research Project Proposal 1, Draft and Workshop. So I recorded my voice, or some of you saw a video of me talking through your essay. Sometimes that can be really helpful, and sometimes when you get feedback, especially when you can't have a back and forth, it can kind of confuse things further. So thank you for the folks that have reached out and just clarified some of my comments. I think the big things I'm looking for in your Essay 1 revision is that I think drafts are meant to be drafts because they're sort of messy organizationally, and the formatting is always a little bit off. So I think it's going back, it's making smart choices about exactly what your introductory paragraph is. That you have a thesis statement that talks about there was a change, and here's some of the rhetoric that contributed to that change. That I said this a lot to folks, like think about paragraph building, right? You never want to start a paragraph with somebody else's words. You always want to frame the citations that you use from your research. So it's your topic sentences is your own language. Then maybe you have a citation, you do some work with that citation in your own words. Maybe you have another citation, again, you analyze that, and then you move on to your next paragraph. I can't say enough about clean, deep paragraphs being really important. And then the other thing is obviously formatting. I want to show you a couple of things up here just to give you a quick refresher in MLA and a little bit in APA. MLA and APA, it's all about where you're putting the punctuation marks and that you're punctuating things correctly. So I think of it just as an equation, and it's just like any math equation, you just have to remember it so that you can use it again and again. So I referenced many of you to the short essay guide that I use for really all of my writing classes. It talks about in-text citation, what a works cited sheet should look like, what's a good paragraph, how to format. So I think all of you could benefit from looking at that. So in terms of content for Essay 1, I actually think you all listened to me a lot about what the expectation for this paper was, because what I got was a lot of excerpts from rhetoric and analysis. So that's really what I feel is often missing in these papers. So congratulations on getting that in your first drafts. And now I think it's sort of cleaning that up. I also said to a few of you, sometimes you have so much of the rhetoric in there that we lose your voice. So just remember, you want to balance. If you're putting long quotes into the paper, you also need to be writing in your own words about those long quotes. So yeah, I think organization, I think formatting, I think most of the content is there. I said to very few of you that you had to go back and add a whole lot of writing. And like I said, depending on when you got your comments, and essays to me are always evolving, so it's always hard for me to put a due date on them. I don't want you to get far behind, but I think you'll feel behind if you don't have a revision done this week by Sunday. And then shifting focus to Essay 2, I've had a lot of good questions about how to structure this essay. And I did put up some student examples, and I think they're really important to look at because they show you a few things. One is how to do that sort of personal narrative I'm letting you do at the beginning of the essay if you choose to, right? It's sort of, you can write about your own experience or or an observation you had for the first couple of paragraphs. I tell you put it into italics. It's supposed to kind of be, it's not part of your academic paper, but it sort of sets up a story or narrative right before we begin, and that can be really powerful. But then once you're done with that, you have to go back into straight academic writing, right? And the intro of this paper should really tell us what the conflict is. And then your thesis statement really should say, and possible solutions include, right? So you are being persuasive in this essay. You're trying to use logos, logic, to convince us that the pathos part convinces us that this is a problem, we need to solve it, and that human beings are being affected by it. But your solution moment needs to be well researched and logical. Like, what can we do? And you're not going to solve the whole thing, but I think 2 solid solutions is good in this paper. So we talked about the SA2 planning sheet, where it's set the context of the conflict. Where are some of the arguments? What's going to happen if we don't solve it? And finally, solution or moving forward, right? If I had to put the essay into any type of context, it would be these 4 parts. So think about that when you're drafting, like 2 paragraphs here, 2 paragraphs here, 2 paragraphs here, right? 2 paragraphs for each of these categories, I think, if you're struggling with what this should look like structurally. So the other piece is, okay, you've had interviews, and I know it was frustrating for some of you, and what I've said to a few of you is even just the process of composing a professional email to someone, or making a phone call, or walking into an office and requesting an interview is good for your education. It gets you out from behind your desk, and it gets you out into the world, and you're being thoughtful about how you communicate with people. So remember that is really helpful, even if, and that's a big part of your education, even if you didn't successfully complete interviews. So I asked a few of you who couldn't get interviews, just tell me about your process so that I know that you gave it a try. So the interviews do not have to be in your essay, unless there's a few of you that got really excellent interviews. TT was able to talk to Senator Maggie Hassan, which is incredible. And some of you talked to directors in the field. So I think those are helpful things to use in terms of that being a source in your paper, right? So probably, maybe if you just had a conversation with your sister about it, that's probably not going to end up in the paper. But if you had a conversation with a real addict, then that's going to end up in the paper. And so let's talk about how to use interviews in your paper. So on the works cited sheet, if you're using an interview, and many of you said that people wanted to stay anonymous, which is totally fine. So let's start with how you cite it on a works cited sheet. So it's cited. Okay, so as you can see, it's last name, first name, just that it was a personal interview and the date that you completed the interview. And this is what's going to go into your in-text citation when you use this interview, okay? The date that you completed the interview. So if the person does not want to give their first name, their last name, that's fine. You can just put their first name. If they don't want to give any information, you can just write anonymous here. Okay, if that person says, don't use me at all, okay? So that's your works cited entry, your last page where you have to cite this. And then let me show you quickly how to do I think it's important that you don't slip back into first person when you're using this like a source. You're not using this like, you're not saying in the body of your paper. I had a great conversation with Kathy from Concord Hospital, who's a nurse, right? We're saying something more like this. Okay, let me move that back so you can see it. So if you take a look, we're saying something more like this. We're staying in third person in an interview with a nurse at Concord Hospital. You don't even need to say Concord Hospital if you're trying to protect your source. You can say at a local hospital. She pointed out, and notice the in-text citation. These are her actual words. Opioids are the new cancer. So it's open quote, close quote, and then we have our parentheses. Period. And the reason in in-text citation why the period goes right here is because if we put the period here, we have double periods. And if we lose the period here, we're starting a new sentence, and there's no punctuation between those two. So we really need the period to go here, not here. And I see this mistake a lot. The other mistake I see is that we put the quotation marks here at the end, but they go here after the quotation. And I'll take a picture of this for you too, because obviously it's backwards on your screen. But we want to do this with our interviews rather than, and you can substitute this with anything, in an interview with a current addict, in an interview with a recovering addict, in an interview with a detective from the police department. We just want to stay in third person and use it as a source. So, and then I just wanted to show you, so I'll take a picture of that, but remember, in-text citations are all about where you put the punctuation marks, so this is a really good example. Everything should have close quote, open quote, close quote, right? Parentheses, the source. For this, it's the date, but if we had an actual author here, we'd put the author. And then do you all remember, so the author goes there. Do you all remember what we do if you have no author, you can still use this? It's just going to be an article title. And what do you notice about the article title there, if you can see it? You have to put quotation marks around the article title. So, direct quote, let's say this came from an article called Opioid Crisis. This also gets quotes. That's what lets us know it's an actual article title. Now, the only difference if you're using APA, they don't like punctuation at all, okay? So we don't punctuate in APA the same way, and we always have to have the year of the research. That is so important, okay? Always the year. This doesn't change, but what goes inside here does. This can be an author's last name and the year. This could be an article number, article title and the year. But if you're using APA, you've got to be putting the year in there, okay? So this is the first time I'm using this board, so hopefully this is not overly confusing writing it like this, but I'll take a picture of this because this is really important. This is how you do the interview piece, and then this was just a reminder to how to do an in-text citation. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it at that. The two, depending on where you are, Essay 1 is the priority right now, but getting a good draft of Essay 2 out is also important. Where we go from here is that I put up our third project. It's about how your field, whatever it is that you plan on doing with your life, is going to change the world. So I think it could be super inspiring. And that's our last unit. So it's gonna look very similar. We'll have an argument exercise. You'll do a research proposal, you'll do a research exercise, and then you will draft the paper. So yeah, you can sort of see the light at the end of the tunnel, especially if you've drafted Essay 2 at this point. So, and then the other piece that some students ask me about is the original piece of rhetoric. So this is not meant to stress you out, and you don't have to be an artist in order to do this, but it's the idea that you're sending some type of image, right? Or you're making some public statement, or you're writing a poem that can be seen by your classmates, right? That makes these really pathos type conflicts. It sends a powerful message about them. It sends a powerful human message about them. I had my class last semester a couple of people made memes, right? Memes are the way that we are communicating in this world right now, and I guess you can make them on your own. So just think, what message do you want to put out about your conflict, and what medium is most appropriate for that? Okay, I will leave it at that for now. I'll take a picture of this and post it as well so you can see it in real life. And please let me know what questions you have, and really try to enjoy this holiday week. Okay, thanks.